Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio.
Special needs, lower function, but I prefer to work with higher function special needs. I prefer to work with support adults rather than children that is younger than 19. It's too much red tape, and I start to coach them. I always had a if I would rate somebody's case, so to speak, then I would say, okay, I'm going to put expectation level, say, this high with this person, and see if they can get close. And the moment they get close, I'll raise the bar. That's what coaches do, after all, right? And and I've had, I had some resistance from the old school psychiatry and government agencies as well. But the clients improved. I had one guy I worked with him for 3.5 years. He was high functioning autism. And voluntary mute, but he's not voluntary mute anymore. He speaks in public, or he speaks in public quiet, but he's not afraid of his own voice anymore. And that's then I became I got involved with I already was working for that organization. Was in Fraser Valley, and they had a young man. He was development delayed, but he had also he had Marfan syndrome, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, but Marfan syndrome is where you have every cell in your body is stretched. He had aneurysms from his heart on the aorta all the way to all the organs. If he would, I could not do CPR with him at all. That was not possible. I would actually break the aorta doing that. Short story, let's see. I became his primary caregiver with CLBC, and that's Community Living of British Columbia. That's the Crown organization from the government working with adult special needs. And I got a direct contract with them. And I worked with Daniel and another young man till Daniel passed. And so my mom died in 2006 due to Alzheimer's, could not breathe. Daniel died in March 2007. My dad got a stroke in June 2008. He died in December 2008. And I went from being all right to a place where I did not know what the heck what was happening with me. I became to a point where I felt totally numb. I felt totally indifferent to others. I started to feel indifferent to myself, and I didn't give a shit about myself, to be honest. And I started doing things that I would normally not do, just to feel something. Till I hit rock bottom, and I came to a point where I said, I can't do this anymore. I want out. And at that time, I moved to Vancouver Island, and I took the last ferry from Tsawwassen to Duke Point. Halfway point was after midnight. I went outside, took my coat off, I went outside, and I stood at the railing, and I said, you know what, this is it. I'm just going to jump down. And so I looked down in the waters, and I said, if I change halfway point, change my mind, there's nothing to hang on to. And then I saw the twinkling lights of Vancouver, and I said, that's a hell of a long ways to swim if I change my mind. And that kind of, just that energy, because I was already hardly any energy left, just that thought about having more energy to do that kind of stopped me from doing it. And I went inside, and I thought, okay, there must be another way. And so I took myself out of coaching, out of caregiving. I took a different route myself. I just went back to selling whatever I was doing. And about 3-4 years ago, I came to a realization that, there is a silver lining. My mom always told me, she said, after every dark cloud, there is a silver lining. The moment it comes to you, you have to be ready for it. And so I was sitting down, and I thought, I'm going to write my story down, how it went from where I was doing all right to where I was almost jumped off the ship, and then right where I'm now. And I wrote the sequence out, and I started to write out my thought processes in those days, and my emotions, my physical and emotional feelings, and how I reacted to things, what I didn't do, and I created that into what I call a wellness chart, and that became a chart where you can actually track your own burnout process. Where are you actually at? Because while I was working with special needs, I noticed that it's not the why that's so important for them. It's the when that's important to them. When can they change, or when can they want to change, but the moment the when comes up, their stress levels went sky high at times. And I thought to myself, it's we know who to contact for help. We know why we should do it. We know where to go. We know what to say, but we don't know when to go. And if I look at my process, how I went through that whole thing, I did not know. If I knew when to go, I would have not been in that situation. And because I did not know what was happening, but the when itself, I knew I was going down, but I didn't know when to go. And so that's what I do now. Like I help people realize what stress is actually, because I believe stress is energy. It's not an emotion. It's not a tangible thing. It can happen just like that, and it can be gone just like that. It's kind of like falling in love. You love something, and next moment you don't like it, right? But you don't even think about it. It's the same with stress. And burnout, I believe, is a natural process from the body to help us keep safe. So we need the burnout in order to find out our limits and to know how far we can go and not go beyond that for a prolonged period of time. We can go beyond that a few times, but we always have to go back to the safety on the other side. And that's what I'm trying to help people, is how to take away the fear of stress and burnout by knowing what it actually is and why it is actually good for us, and using that energy from the stress in a more effective way. The moment you can do that, the moment you can go from trying to ignore it or dismiss it or reacting in a destructive way, and you can change that and use the energy to be effective in what you need to do. At that moment, there is no fear of stress and burnout anymore. Actually they become an important part of your tool set, your skill set. And then you can move mountains. Then you can look into your peripheral vision and see there is more than just where you're dealing with. And that's what I want to help people with. I don't want them to go through what I went through.
Yeah. How do you actually help them with that?
It's done by inquiring. Like I'm helping some people across the country with fatigue and stress during the COVID-19 breakout. And I do it for free. I don't charge for it. I just give my time for them. And I basically ask them, what I'm trying to figure out what they're dealing with currently that gives them the stress and gives them that fatigue. And quite often they start a story, and then you kind of wait for those key elements that come through that with that story. You always have to wait. There's always a tail at the end of the story, so you always have to wait. And you ask a few questions and to see if they're struggling with that, if clarifying for them, are you actually struggling with that? And quite often they come to realization that what they start out with is quite often not what they're struggling with. But it is something that is it's kind of like the coat around the whole story. And then you start to realize that these are the areas that I am struggling with. And so then I created a process for journaling, and that's based on your reactions, your thoughts process, and your feelings, so physical and emotional feelings. And I sent that to them. It's a PDF file, and I say, if you are journaling, great, have a look at it and see how you can modify your journaling in such a way that it has a purpose now for you. Because journaling especially journaling with a purpose, is a self-discovery process on how your behavioral patterns are when you are going through your lows and also when you go through your highs. It's very important to know what's happening with you in those moments, because we can always look at what's negative in our lives, but we also need to look at what's positive in our lives. And we need to know what skill sets are really working and what kind of coping skills are really ineffective right now. And the moment we have that information, then I can work with them and say, okay, so if I teach them a brand new skill, for instance, Michael, then their resistance to learning that new skill is high because it's foreign to them.
Right.
Make sense?
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. So, but if I make them realize that, say, in one area, no matter what comes at them, they know somehow, they know how to handle that, right? We all have that.
Right.
And there's a skill set there that is working really well. But quite often we are not thinking that skill set would work in the area where we struggle at, because that's quite often comes from our past, how we are taught how to deal with stress by our parents or by our guardians. Quite often we pick up the bad behaviors easier than the good behaviors. Mm-hmm. And so I said, okay, now let's look at the area where you actually excel at. And let's look at it really closely. What are your skill sets there? So what is it that you're doing right there that when something else comes on your plate, you kind of handle it pretty good? Let's see if you can transfer that skill set to the area where you're struggling at. So now you're using their natural abilities, the natural skill set already, that they know it's working, into the area where it's not working. So what happens then, the resistance to transfer those skills is a lot lower than if I teach you a new skill.
It's something you already know.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so what might have to be done is you have to tweak it. You have to maybe evolve it a little bit, change it, but the principles are the same. And then what I do is, okay, now let's look at the smallest problem that you're dealing with currently, the one that you have the most control over. Because we don't want to look at the bigger ones. We don't even want to go there. We just want to look at the smaller ones that you have the most control over. Because I want to help them bring success into lives in the areas that are struggling. So I ask them to just picture all the problems that they have, that they're struggling with, as a suitcase or a box and stuff them in the closet. And then I ask them to open up the closet and I say, okay, now pick the smallest one out. Describe it to me. What's in it? And then they will describe what it looks like, and what's in there. I said, so what might you do now that you have this skill set where it is working well? What might you do with that? How might you work towards a solution or an opportunity to work through this? And the moment they look at that with their own skill set and the small problem that they are dealing with, they can actually fix it really fast, just like that. And it's okay, so that one's done, right? Yes, so let's put it aside. It's no more. Now let's look at the second box, that is the smallest one. And you go from there, and then eventually you end up with a couple of boxes in that closet. The one is quite often it's family related, perhaps relationship related, work related, where you do not have so much control over. Mm-hmm. You can only have control over what you can do, but you don't have control over other people, correct?
Right.
But now they are actually clearer. The problems are more clearly defined because they're not amongst the clutter of all the issues.
So
and that's what's being
clarity.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the sequential self-discovery process is. That's how I coach.
Well, that's I don't even know how to describe how easy that you just walk people through this process, and on the other end they have the coping skills they need.
Yes, I believe that you and I have already coping skills to deal with all our issues that comes to us. There are extraordinary times, like right today. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean you do not have the skills to help you get through it.
Right.
But there are certain skill sets that are only yours. They are not transferable.
Okay. How does that actually work?
Well, let's go back to the person that has fibromyalgia.
Okay.
We know that the person with fibromyalgia has more nerve ends that say I have. If I feel a level of 5, they feel the level of 9 or higher, right? Mm-hmm. So they know their body, the whole body system, the best. So if something comes into their life that affects their mental, emotional health, and they know their limits with the fibromyalgia, then I can teach them all kinds of new skills, but they might be completely poisonous to their system.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? Makes sense? So I rather work with them and say, let's look at your skill set that you have, and let's help you tweak it. And I'm not going to do it for you, but I'm going to help you do it yourself.
So they have to. You're also helping them visualize what the answer or the coping mechanism might look like.
Yes, because I believe That's why journaling is so important, actually, because we can think thousands of words and images in our mind in a moment, right? Picture is 1,000 words. But you need to look at that picture and you need to write down what you see and what you feel and how are you reacting to that picture at certain areas of that picture. And the moment you start doing that, you start to discover way more information that you have in that picture they can just see. And you start to actually align what is important and what is not so important. They're all important, but some of them are more important than others. And so you start to work with what your needs are and what your wants are. It's so important for us to know what we need and what we want. Because quite often what we want is not what we need. And that's so true, especially during this COVID-19.
Right.
We want our life back. Yes, we all do that. But what we had is not there anymore. It might look the same after this COVID-19, but it will be changed.
Oh, yes,
it's not,
very true.
It's not the same anymore. Yes, but a lot of people say they're like I say to me, that's why I wrote that last post on LinkedIn. Is the uncertainties, there's anxiety about not knowing what's to come, and so they flounder in that the uncertainty, the unknown, the fear, the stress, it creates depression. It creates anything because they can't feel it. It's not tangible for them right now. So they're looking at answers on how to fix it elsewhere, but they need to look inside. What can they do now differently that helps them?
Right.
Because we don't have control over everything else. We only have control over our own emotions, our own behaviors, our own thought process. We can change that. No one else has that power. Only us. So it all comes down to what can I do to make a difference for me in this life, especially during these times. And that's what my message is out there for them, is what can you do? What can you do for you? And what can I do for me? And because if I help myself, and this is why I strongly believe that self-care has to be of equal value of giving care. Like when you are in a plane and the stewardess does the presentation, who gets the mask first? Your child, or your loved one, or you?
Right. They always stress that you should put your mask on first.
Correct, because then you are able to help the person. If you put the mask on them, and in the meantime you die, then you cannot help them anymore. And it's the same with giving care. If you don't take care of yourself, give yourself care and take care of yourself, and you diminish that, you also diminish your ability to give care to others.
Right.
And that's the key, because it is about self-care. It is about knowing where your limits are, knowing where your strengths are, knowing where you can actually tweak your situation to make it better. And that's why journaling is so important. It is basically the foundation tool of my coaching, because without that self-discovery, you are swimming in the dark. You are in no man's land. You don't have a clue what to change. And when you don't know what to change, then you start to react to situations. Mm-hmm. You don't have insight. You start to react, and quite often your reaction is not the most effective one at that moment. And then what happens? Then you start to create. Then you have self-doubt, and you start to say stuff like, "How stupid of me." and then you start to self-assassinate your character. And when that happens, you basically are in a downward spiral and say, I'm not worthy to even be here. That's where I was.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it is. It's so important to know what you're all about. Because the more you know about who you are and what you are, the more you can help another person.
Right. It's the same as that oxygen.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same principle. It's exactly the same. Yeah.
So a lot of the care and giving care and then self care, a lot of the principles stay the same. It's just, could we say, intensity versus the one situation may be more intensive while the principles are the same. It's just one's a little more involved and the other one is a little less involved.
I think it's a progression of seeing the needs of others above your own. Mm-hmm. In the beginning, it's kind of equal, and then over time, you start to feel more fatigue, and you start to feel a little bit more burned out. But you see the need is still there, or even greater than when you started. So you focus on their, and then basically their needs becomes your own self-care strategy, what they call. It's the stress management. Mm-hmm. It's almost like it turns into a codependency of the caregiver to the person that you give care to.
Right.
It actually helps you get through all those moments. But what you're doing at that time, you're burning the candle on both sides, and eventually the candle will burn in the middle, and that means you have 4 fires. And that candle of energy, that's your reserve energy, is starting to burn faster and faster and faster till there's absolutely nothing left. And when you are in that stage where there's absolutely nothing left, and say, I hope that you are going and seek professional counseling for that, way before that, but say you go at that moment, you go there, the job of the counselor or the psychiatrist to help you get back to where you were before is way longer and harder for them and yourself than actually where you don't burn up your reserve energy. Because then you're recuperating. Yeah, because when you hit down bottom, so you understand that burnout is happening and the stress is part of it. You just let it actually. It goes totally against you because you want to fight it. That's your natural instinct. That's what you've been taught all those years. But if you just let it happen and you hit rock bottom, you actually still have your reserve energy, and you just have to sit down and say, "Okay, I need help here." You reach out for help. And when the counselor starts to help with you, you're already on the way up because you have your reserve energy still there. And so your recuperation period is so much shorter. And then you can go back to where you were. And then we go through that whole cycle again. But at the same time, you gain self-knowledge about your limits. You start to listen to your body better because the body never lies. Our mind lies quite often because they say, well, you don't have time for that. And I wrote an article on LinkedIn about mind over matter, matter over mind. And it is where, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going.
Right.
Stick with it. I'm tough. I can handle that. That's the mind telling the body, saying, I'm in charge. Till the body says, no. I'm in charge. Now you sit down and you shut up because we need to heal.
Yeah, is that more like it's not mind over your body? Is it as they both have to come together as a team and work together in order for us to get through it? To get through the stress? Yes, absolutely. We are a holistic
being. We're not a robot. We cannot just take an arm off and replace it with a different arm. Right? We don't work that way. Right? But we need to look at when we are dealing with stress and burnout, we need to look at that as a whole being. And that's why it's so important, again, the journaling, is to understand what's happening. Because in the journaling with a purpose, you write down your thought processes, you write down your emotional feelings and your physical feelings. Because physical feeling is so important, because some people will experience stress and burnout in certain parts of the body. The body will actually give you signals that's happening again, but the mind is always saying, I don't have time for this. You know, you might have a pain in the lower back that is based on a stress pain from way back. You might have feeling of choking around your neck. You might feel tightness in your chest. You might feel whatever. You might feel it in your little toe. It doesn't matter where it is. If you learn to listen to those signals, then you say, okay, what's happening? Like I write journals, but I also do it on a daily level, right in the moment. I say, okay, I feel this. What's happening right now? Okay, I feel that. Where have I felt that before? Yes, I have felt that before. What happened before that? Okay, this and this was happening, and I reacted this and this way. Okay, I'm doing the same thing again. See, I use it as a skill set in the moment. And the moment I validate that, I know what's happening, I know what to do with it. But if I say, well, I don't have time for that, or ignore it, or rush through it, eventually you come to on the other side of that situation, and you didn't learn anything about yourself, but what you did learn is not to do it more effectively. You did it ineffectively. Now, in a very high stressful situation where you are in danger, you do exactly what you need to do to survive, and then you can evaluate afterwards. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just strictly on the progressive nature of building up stress, burnout during this COVID-19 crisis.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was a case because a case in point of a group of caregivers who are completely overstressed. It was in Italy where this one particular nurse, as the story went, she had worked hours and hours on end because they were so overrun with cases, and then she got tested one day and she came up positive, and hours later she had killed herself.
Yes.
It's like it was the suicide I thought was because she was unable to deal with the stress around her, and she thought that the stress had completely overrun her mind, and that was and she took her life. How would you assess what happened there, and how might you been able to curb such a thing from happening?
That's a tough one. Suicide is I would say the final solution to a situation. So I don't know what went through her, what she was dealing with. I don't know. I can relate to what I was feeling. I feel for her and for her family. I really do. But I think if you would have known what I know, she might not have gone there. I'm not saying that she wouldn't have gone there. She might have still done it. But it would have given her possibly a way to look at things from a little different angle. That's what it is. You can. It helps you look at your situation from a different angle, and you look at an object, my computer, I can describe it to you. But if I move from a different angle, I would describe the computer in a different way, even though it's the same computer. And I think that's the only thing that I could say, that she might have looked at her situation from a different point of view, and maybe seen something different. But I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. That it is a tough situation, and hopefully none of our caregivers get placed in such a situation like that. So
I hope not, because it's devastation all around. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
So, do you have any quick tips just to help people stop for a second and cope with what's going on in front of them, and then so they can move forward again?
Yes, what I do sometimes when I'm really busy, I'll go back to where I was working with about 15 clients in one day, and in order to remember all those situations with different clients, I would have a piece of paper or a little booklet for me, and I would write the first name down so I knew who I was talking about, and I would write down an emotional word that would describe that situation the best. Mm-hmm. It's a very short version of writing a journal with a purpose. And I would say, if you're working as a caregiver currently, if you're working as a nurse currently, or if you're working as a doctor currently, and dealing with this, or even a government worker or a janitor dealing with coronavirus, trying to get through this day, is to take a moment, if you can, write down, or type it in your device. Write down that keyword, that one keyword. It can be frustration, it can be anger, it can be tired, or anything. Keep it short and simple. And when you have a moment afterwards that day, when you have a moment, just write it out in a sentence. That one keyword. It will validate what you're experiencing, because validation of what you're dealing with is so important for our self-care. Because you have every right to feel that way. You have every right to feel angry. You have every right to feel frustrated, exhausted, but just the validation itself gives you that. It gives you a bit of it lowers down your stress when you actually validate what you're going through, and it gives you a little bit more. You free up a little bit more energy because you're not dealing with trying to dismiss it or ignore it. Mm-hmm. So you're switching your energy from dismissing or ignoring what you're dealing with to the area where you validate it. And actually it puts that little energy that you free for validation, it puts a little spring in your system, and a spring in your step. Mm-hmm. And that will get you through that day, or that moment, or that transition when you are going from gung-ho working and supporting, and now also at home and you feel isolated because you don't have that interaction, even though it's 6 feet apart, if it's possible. And then I was supporting one person last week, and she mentioned that she feels isolated at home. Not on the weekends because she does virtual meetings with her friends, and she mentioned to me that she's dealing with Monday was fine when she got home, and Tuesday she feels a little more tired, and Wednesday a little more tired, Thursday a little more tired, and then she said to me, John, I was late for our call. I actually slept in on Friday, so that tells me that her fatigue levels at home are increasing over time in the week. And so we found out that on the weekends she does a virtual coffee meets or something. So I suggested to her, create also something in midweek for you. So you don't have that long term to look forward to the Saturday, what we always do when we work. We have the Monday to the Friday routine. But because the COVID-19 situation brings a lot of extra weight, emotional weight on our shoulders, in our bodies, and more stress, I said, break the week up. So find another social activity you can do, connect with others, and find something that is perhaps a little different than what you normally do. Find the demographics that you like to stay in contact with. Like maybe you like older people, maybe you like younger people, maybe you like something like this, maybe you like something like that. So you break up. So when you are gung-ho working Monday through Friday or even Saturday, sometimes people work even 7 days now in a row.
Yeah.
Right? And they have to. They have no choice. And I really feel sorry because I wish I could go in there and help them, but I can't, because of my home situation. So the thing is that find something to break up that constant, never-ending workload. It doesn't matter. It's not about the quantity. It's about the quality moment. Give you that little extra self-care that you can, and that's so important.
Okay. So, what are the best ways to contact you if somebody wants to work with you to get some help?
So you can contact me via LinkedIn. If you go to my profile on LinkedIn, that's John Cazander, JOHN. Cazander. You can always contact me on there. I'm on Facebook, so you can find me there as well. You can email me, and I'll say it first, and I'll spell it for you. So the email is freeyourselfromstress@gmail.com. So that's FREYOURSELFFROMSTRESS@gmail.com. And that's the best way. And my phone number, I can give you my cell number. That's fine too. Okay. 250-202-8785.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Michael.
I hope that you're weathering everything out there. It's Gold River, right?
It's Gold River, BC. Yeah, it's the central part of the island. So lengthwise, widthwise, but technically we're on the west coast.
Cool. So hopefully you guys are weathering everything really well out there. Not too many cases and lots of resources. So
yes.
You have a great day, and thanks again.
Thank you, Michael, and have a great day yourself.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.